up, everybody? Back out here with the MR2 again. We got a couple neat little projects to work on this week. I've been itching to get these flares wrapped and mounted, but I kind of had a change of heart on how I wanted to put them on. So stay tuned. Next week I should have some parts coming in the mail that will help me get that done. Today's project's going to be inside the car though. Let me get this top drop for some better lighting. So the two things I want to accomplish in today's video are remaking this gauge pod and also replacing the steering wheel with the one that has the green stripe on it. So first thing I'm going to do is remove the steering wheel. Starting with the gauge pod, I originally made this one to contour the steering column because I wasn't going to run any trim on top. But now I bought some Audi TT trim pieces and I modified them so that they'd fit in the car. I got the bottom piece that we're going to do later, but now it makes a nice flat surface, so I have to redesign and print a new one of these. So since I hardwired this in here, I got to cut the wires to get it back out. And for the vacuum line, I used one of those one-time use clamps, but this is a small enough diameter you can kind of wiggle them out. All right, there's our gauge and pod. All right, I got the gauge back in the house. I removed the old pod from it. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to make it all from scratch again, so you'll see the whole process. First thing I'm going to do is take measurements of the gauge pod itself and then the bezel that goes around it. 51.88, 56.94, 57 millimeters. So I've gone ahead and opened up Fusion 360. I'm going to go ahead and change the top view first thing. We're going to create a sketch on this plane. We're going to make the two circles of the diameters that we measured on the gauge itself. So I've decided on the gauge pod though, I'm going to go with the smaller diameter for the outer, just so that the bezel on the gauge itself can stick out past that. So we'll decide with 56.8 instead of 57. We're going to do the inner circle. And I kind of want to make it a slight interference fit so that it stays in snugly, but it also won't be able to come out. So I'm not going to go with the 52 millimeters. I'm going to bump that up a little bit to 52.15, just to give it a little bit of room in there. Otherwise, it's really hard to push them in. The first one I made, I went exact, and it was not easy. So there's our two circles for the diameter there. We go ahead and make a rectangle for the base of it. This is just going to be a simple gauge pod. You can get creative as you want. So I'm going to use probably a 20 millimeter wide. These are all millimeters, these squares. So I'm going to start there, and I'm going to work it over. So that's going to be the base, and then I'm going to make an actual plate to mount to the vehicle. That one is going to be here. I'm going to go probably about 5 millimeters thick. Yeah, let's take it down to 3 millimeters. Alright, so that's going to be the basic shape of the pod. I'm going to finish the sketch. And essentially what we can do from here is extrude it. We'll pick multiple things to extrude. We'll turn it sideways so we can kind of watch it. So this is the measurement I did not take, which was the depth, or how deep we want this thing to go. So I did take another measurement past that. This is really arbitrary to how you want it. I want to basically hide all the connections and stuff too, so I decided 62 millimeters was enough to do that for me. So hit enter. So basically the bottom of this, you can do whatever you want. You can add screw holes, or in my case, I'm just going to use VHB tape. One last thing before we export this is I want to make these edges have a fillet, so it makes it kind of rounded around instead of a square. So to do that, we'll go to modify, fillet, and then we'll pick each edge we want to modify on that. So I'm going to go just on the corners of each one of those. And then one last one. And then you can use the arrow to kind of punch it in, and you can see it round out. It gives it that nice clean look. If you go too far, it kind of starts modifying the rest of the model, so don't do that. Just a nice little bit there. Alright, I like how that looks. Go ahead and hit OK. And we want to export this model. Alright, I've gone ahead and opened up my slicer. In this case, I'm using Creality Print. If any of you do 3D printing and use a different slicer, let me know which one you use and why in the comments below. Go ahead and open up the file, Gauge Pod R2, which we just did. It's already there. I have a preset for PETG, which is the material I'll be printing on. So it's already ready to go. So I'll just go ahead and hit Start Slice. We'll export. In this case, I have a thumb drive that I'm going to use to transfer files over. Save the G code. We'll go ahead and transfer that over to the printer and start printing. Alright, on to actually printing the part. Move the G-code file over to this Sonic pad here. It's connected to the CR10 V3 printer, and all we got to do at this point is hit print. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and print it. Hit print, USB stick, and there's our gauge pod G-code. Go ahead and print. All right, now cue the time lapse. Alright, print was a success. Go ahead and remove it from the build plate. There's our part. We gotta clean it up, see if it fits. Let's check here. It's just a little bit of interference. Perfect fit. Alright, let's go ahead and get it painted and put it on the car. I'm gonna hit this thing with some paint. We're gonna use the SEM Trim Black. Alright, while we wait for the paint to dry, I'm gonna have to remove this hub adapter to get those two trim pieces on. 12mm triple square. I'm just gonna impact it out. Now with that out of the way, we can go ahead and put our new plastic pieces on. Start with the bottom one. Go ahead and put our top piece. Now there's supposed to be 4 screws that go to this, but I'm only gonna need 3 because I don't have a stalk in here yet for the windshield wipers. Now we need to splice the wires back together and get that vacuum line reconnected. I'm going to be using these little solder connectors, and these just have a low temperature solder in them. You heat them with a heat gun and they'll shrink and solder the joint at the same time. I'm going to go ahead and slide this over before I strip them. I'll go ahead and strip the 4 wires. Alright, we're going to go ahead and twist the end of these wires together. Gonna try my best. These are really tiny wires, so I'm gonna go ahead and roll that splice over top. So just like that. Oh, there's a little wire sticking out. Let's try that again. All right, so it should look like that. I'm gonna do that to both of them. All right, there's our 2 splices right there. As you can tell, there's already another one on the red wire, but in the words of DJ Khaled, another one. All right, I'm gonna hit these with a heat gun, high setting, and you'll watch as it shrinks, and hopefully you'll see on camera when the solder melts. And there you have it. All right, now for the vacuum line, we're gonna run it through the back of this, pull this out. We'll put a new single-use clamp on. And pinch it down. All right, now for reinstallation of the steering hub and steering wheel, there's a bolt in here. You can see that where the blue Loctite is. I'm gonna apply a little more. That was factory Loctite in there. I'm gonna go ahead and reinstall this as closely as I can to where I took it off. Normally you would mark it, but mine was already off anyway, so I gotta do an alignment. Then for putting it back on, we're gonna torque it to 38 foot-pounds. Install the new steering wheel, lock the steering rack, and we are done. All right, quick overview of everything completed. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.